Hello and welcome to this week's how-to video for parents. I'm Karen Lockcolp. I am a parent coach and I have a combined 15 years of experience working with kids and their parents, little kids and their parents. And I'm excited about this one today. It's really funny because initially I thought I was going to get in here and talk about how to foster boredom, as if you didn't have enough of it in your lives. And what I've been hearing is that people don't know what to do when they have bored kids. So what I decided to do was to make this video be about what to do when you hear the complaint, "I'm bored," from your kids, because that is something that happens a lot, especially as we are heading into these summer months where there's typically more downtime and different routines than we have in the rest of the year. So welcome, and I really hope this is helpful. If you want to hear more on this, you can go to WeTurnedOutOK.com/181, which is the podcast episode sorry, not 181, WeTurnedOutOK.com/281. I don't even know why I said one. Anyway, 281, because that's the episode that I did on what to do when you've got bored kids, and I did call that one tapping into this untapped force, or underutilized resource, which is boredom. Think of it as a positive. Like if we're starting from a place where we've got kids that are bored, that's actually, it's a good place to start. And I know it doesn't necessarily feel like that, but what I've got today are some things that you can do and say when that is coming up for you. So the first thing that I recommend is that when your child says to you, "I'm bored," that you say to them, "What does your body need?" Like when you say you're bored, think about how your body is feeling. Does it need to move around? Does it need some kind of stimulation that it is not getting right now? Like a lot of times our physical bodies need stuff that we don't necessarily want to give it, because like we want to keep watching the thing we're watching. This happens to me all the time at night with Netflix, or recently watching something in Amazon Prime. And I had said to my husband before, there were 3 episodes left, and I said to my husband, "I can't watch more than 1 episode tonight. Can you help me remember that?" And he said, "Sure." And sure enough, we came to the end of that episode, and I was like, "But I want to watch the next one." And he's like, "But you said you couldn't." And I'm like, "I know." So my body needed to get up and move around and not be sort of in this like place of just watching a screen. And actually it was getting on bedtime for me. So that's the other thing is, it can be really hard to be disciplined about it. But if we help our kids understand early in life that their body tells them things and gives them signals, it's going to be much easier for them as they grow to understand that and like take it into account and obey their body's needs. So oftentimes when they say, "I'm bored," and you say, "What does your body need?" they may come up with something that you never thought of. Like maybe they'll be like, "Oh, it needs food." And you can make something for lunch or whatever. Or maybe they'll say, "I need to run around," and you can plan some version of that. So the first thing is to ask your child, "What does your body need?" And just see what they come up with. Help them come up with their own ways of surmounting the boredom. And then the second thing that I like to recommend is to bring in open-ended tactile experiences that your child can do and play with and manipulate, but that don't necessarily have a correct answer or a series of steps. It's not about following directions. It's just about exploring, and seeing what happens. So one of my favorite things to do is to play with cornstarch mixed with a little bit of water, and just the consistency of it. It's really interesting. Sometimes it's a liquid and sometimes it's a solid. It's really, really interesting. You of course want to have like not new clothes and sort of smocks or like appropriate newspaper laid out or whatever to keep your surfaces clean. But cornstarch and water is a really interesting, open-ended, explorative thing. Maybe your child is more into books or painting or drawing, or something that's tactile, meaning that they can do things with their hands with it. Like, well, a lot of times in our modern world, we forget that like tactile things those experiences are really good and interesting, and boredom busters. They really, really are. And then the third way is to bring out books. to frequently go to the library and switch up books. I mean, I can remember when my kids were young. Now I do this for myself. So I come home with a stack of 10 books that are just for me, and they're fiction, or they're on things like knitting, or they're on so like I'm drafting a book right now, so a lot of what I'm reading has to do with that subject, which is educating young children, and how we parents can take a hand in educating our own children, and why we should. So a lot of the books that I'm getting out of the library now are really for me, but when my kids were, say, 10 and under, I mean, we were routinely hitting that you can only have 50 books out of the library at a time, and we would routinely hit that mark, because going to the library and choosing a whole bunch of new books and then bringing them home and having them there for to look at is a great boredom buster. You can read them together. Your child can look at the pictures or read them themselves. Oftentimes it leads into other things. So if you're reading about, for example, we read a book about the Quabbin Reservoir one time that just got our kids really interested in, like, because the thing about the Quabbin Reservoir here in Massachusetts is they covered up 4 towns to make it. And what was that like? And like, if you go to the Quabbin, what do you see in there? And we read a book one time about making clay, and we had to try and figure out how to make clay, because you can get clay from riverbanks and make, and separate it out to make clay. Like, books often will spur other things, and sometimes they spur the creation of books. Our kids want to make books. So like, what we're trying to do is be, I don't like the word whimsical. Maybe serendipitous is a better one than whimsical, but just there's this idea of the art of strewing things. So we put things out and we see what our kids do with them, and we see how they interact with them, and we try to follow that trail if something interests them. And yeah, so those are the ways that I can think of to handle it when your child complains about being bored, when your child tells you that they're bored. Ask them what their body needs. Make sure that there are some interesting tactile activities, not necessarily that need to be done with you, but just that they can explore, and bring books into your life, whether that is through a library or through purchasing them or making them. Bring books into your life. That's a really good way to help kids with the boredom. Do I want to say anything else? I don't think I do. Well, the one last thing I would say is, I did this podcast episode about utilizing this untapped force for learning, which is boredom. And what I really meant by that was, what we're doing is we're fostering curiosity. When we give our kids the time and space to be bored, when you say, listen, figure out what you're going to do. We're putting away the screens. It's time for you to, just play. Figure out what you're going to do here, and foster that kind of open-ended, quiet, just hang out time. Not necessarily quiet, actually. Sometimes it can be quite boisterous, but just the hangout time that that kids need to be creative. That we all need to be creative. I think that's what I want to leave you with, because if they're not saying I'm bored, then you might want to consider fostering boredom, and you do that by shelving the screens, being together, having some of these open-ended activities around, and books around, and just trying to be in tune with what our bodies need, what we are pulled towards in terms of, like, physically and also mentally, So hopefully that helps. Again, go to weturnedoutokay.com/281 if you want more on this. And thanks so much for watching. All right, we'll see you next week for another, what are these called? How-to videos for parents. I'm Karen Lockholt. See you then. Bye.